Judges chapter 9, verse 1. One day Gideon's son Abimelech went to Shechem to visit his uncles, his mother's brothers. He said to them and to the rest of his mother's family, verse 2, ask the leading citizens of Shechem whether they want to be ruled by all 70 of Gideon's sons or by one man, and remember that I am your own flesh and blood. Verse 3, so Abimelech's uncles gave his message to all the citizens of Shechem on his behalf, and after listening to this proposal, the people of Shechem decided in favor of Abimelech because he was their relative. Verse 4, they gave him 70 silver coins from the temple of Baal-berith, which he used to hire some reckless troublemakers who agreed to follow him. Verse 5, he went to his father's home at Ophrah, and there, on one stone, he killed all 70 of his half-brothers, the sons of Gideon, but the youngest brother Jotham escaped and hid. Verse 6, then all the leading citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo called a meeting under the oak beside the pillar at Shechem and made Abimelech their king. Verse 7, when Jotham heard about this, he climbed to the top of Mount Gerizim and shouted, listen to me, citizens of Shechem. Listen to me if you want God to listen to you. Verse 8, once upon a time, the trees decided to choose a king. First, they said to the olive tree, be our king. Verse 9, but the olive tree refused, saying, should I quit producing the olive oil that blesses both God and people, just to wave back and forth over the trees? Verse 10, then they said to the fig tree, you be our king. Verse 11, but the fig tree also refused, saying, should I quit producing my sweet fruit, just to wave back and forth over the trees? Verse 12, then they said to the grapevine, you be our king. Verse 13, but the grapevine also refused, saying, should I quit producing the wine that cheers both God and people, just to wave back and forth over the trees? Verse 14, then all the trees finally turned to the thorn bush and said, come, you be our king. Verse 15, and the thorn bush replied to the trees, if you truly want to make me your king, come and take shelter in my shade. If not, let fire come out from me and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Verse 16, Jotham continued, now make sure you have acted honorably and in good faith by making Abimelech your king, and that you have done right by Gideon and all his descendants. Have you treated him with the honor he deserves for all he accomplished? Verse 17, for he fought for you and risked his life when he rescued you from the Midianites. Verse 18, but today you have revolted against my father and his descendants, killing his 70 sons on one stone, and you have chosen his slave's woman's son Abimelech to be your king just because he is your relative. Verse 19, if you have acted honorably in good faith towards Gideon and his descendants, then may you find joy in Abimelech, and may he find joy in you. Verse 20, but if you have not acted in good faith, then may fire come out of Abimelech and devour the leading citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo, and may fire come out from the citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo to defy Abimelech. Verse 21, then Jotham escaped and lived in Beer, because he was afraid of his brother Abimelech. Verse 22, after Abimelech ruled over Israel for 3 years. Verse 23, God sent a spirit that stirred up trouble between Abimelech and the leading citizens of Shechem, and they revolted. Verse 24, God was punishing Abimelech for murdering Gideon's 70 sons, and the citizens of Shechem for supporting him in the treachery of murdering his brothers. Verse 25, the citizens of Shechem set an ambush for Abimelech on the hilltops and robbed everyone who passed that way. But someone warned Abimelech about their plot. Verse 26, one day Gal, son of Ebed, moved to Shechem with his brothers and gained the confidence of the leading citizens of Shechem. Verse 27, during the annual harvest festival at Shechem, held in the temple of the local god, the wine flowed freely, and everyone began cursing Abimelech. Verse 28, who is Abimelech? Gal shouted, he is not a true son of Shechem, so why should we be his servant? He is merely the son of Gideon, and this Zebul is merely his deputy, serve the true sons of Hamon, the founders of Shechem. Why should we serve Abimelech? Verse 29. If I were in charge here, I will get rid of Abimelech. I will say to him, get some soldiers and come out and fight. Verse 30. But when Zebul, the leader of the city, heard what Gal was saying, he was furious. Verse 31. He sent messengers to Abimelech in Arumah, telling him, Gal, son of Ebed, and his brothers have come to live in Shechem, and now they are inciting the city to rebel against you. Verse 32. Come by night with an army and hide out in the fields. Verse 33. In the morning, as soon as it is daylight, attack the city. When Gal and those who are with him come out against you, you can do with them as you wish. Verse 34. So Abimelech and all his men went by night and split into 4 groups, stationing themselves around Shechem. Verse 35. Gal was standing at the city gate when Abimelech and his army came out of hiding. Verse 36. When Gal saw them, he said to Zebul, look, there are people coming down from the hilltops. Zebul replied, it's just the shadows on the hills that look like men. Verse 37. But again Gal said, no, people are coming down from the hills, and another group is coming down the road past the diviner's oak. Verse 38. Then Zebul turned to him and asked, now where is that big mouth of yours? Wasn't it you that said, who is Abimelech, and why should we be his servants? The men you mocked are right outside the city. Go out and fight them. Verse 39. So Gal led the leading citizens of Shechem into battle against Abimelech. Verse 40. But Abimelech chased him, and many of Shechem's men were wounded and fell along the road as they retreated to the city gate. Verse 41. Abimelech returned to Arumah, and Zebul drove Gal and his brothers out of Shechem. Verse 42. The next day the people of Shechem went out into the fields to battle. When Abimelech heard about it, verse 43, he divided his men into 3 groups and set an ambush in the fields. When Abimelech saw the people coming out of the city, he and his men jumped up from their hiding places and attacked them. Verse 44, Abimelech and his group stormed the city gate to keep the men of Shechem from getting back in, while Abimelech's other 2 groups cut them down in the fields. Verse 45, the battle went on all day before Abimelech captured the city. He killed the people, leveled the city, and scattered salt all over the ground. Verse 46, when the leading citizens who lived in the tower of Shechem heard what had happened, they ran and hid in the temple of Baal-berith. Verse 47, someone reported to Abimelech that the citizens had gathered in the temple. Verse 48, so he led his forces to Mount Zalmon. He took an axe and chopped some branches from the tree. Then he put them on his shoulders. Quick, do as I have done, he told his men. Verse 49, so each of them cut down some branches. Following Abimelech's example, they piled the branches against the walls of the temple and set them on fire. So all the people who lived in the tower of Shechem died, about 10,000 men and women. Verse 50, then Abimelech attacked the town of Tiberias and captured it. Verse 51, but there was a strong tower inside the town, and all the men and women, the entire population fled to it. They barricaded themselves in and climbed up to the roof of the tower. Verse 52, Abimelech followed them and attacked the tower, but as he prepared to set fire to the entrance. Verse 53, a woman on the roof dropped a millstone that landed on Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. Verse 54, he quickly said to his young armor-bearer, draw your sword and kill me. Don't let it be said that a woman killed Abimelech. So the young man ran him through with his sword, and he died. Verse 55, when Abimelech's men saw that he was dead, they disbanded and returned to their homes. Verse 56, in this way, God punished Abimelech for the evil he had done against his fathers by murdering his 70 brothers. Verse 57, God also punished the men of Shechem for all their evil. So the curse of Jotham, son of Gideon, was fulfilled. Amen.